If you fly commercial drones, enterprise UAS, or run public safety missions, the airspace map has fundamentally changed this summer. Welcome to this UAVHQ operator briefing. Today, we're unpacking the Chattanooga World Cup Temporary Flight Restriction Waiver. We're going to look closely at a really vital operational case study regarding airspace access during a major multi-agency security event. The rules of engagement for drone flights have shifted dramatically, and the cost of guessing wrong is no longer just a warning letter in the mail. Here is our roadmap for this briefing. We'll start with the hidden World Cup TFRs, move into the Chattanooga case study, discuss exactly why LAANC is not enough, look at the actual enforcement stakes, and finally, walk through the operator waiver checklist. All right, part 1, the hidden World Cup TFRs and navigating base camp restrictions. Most commercial operators are highly diligent around massive stadiums, right? But consider this operational mystery. Why is a non-host city, a place with absolutely zero World Cup matches, suddenly a federal no-drone zone? On paper, if you just glanced at the headline list of the 11 match stadiums, this city's downtown riverfront shouldn't be affected at all. And yet, despite this strict federal restriction, an operator named Full Spectrum successfully secured explicit federal approval to fly a 500 drone swarm right over the Tennessee River on July 4th. Now, getting 500 uncrewed aircraft into the sky inside a locked-down security zone, that is no small feat. It requires an exact understanding of how these restrictions actually work. To understand how they pulled this off, we really have to break down the FAA's two-tier restriction system for the tournament. The match stadiums get an obvious 3 nautical mile radius up to 3,000 feet. But the second tier? That's the trap. Base camps and fan events carry a 1 nautical mile radius from the surface to 1,000 feet. Buried at the bottom of the FAA's release was the controlling detail that restrictions apply to team hotels and training facilities. These 1 nautical mile rings are the hidden hazards for local flights. The TFR exists because of where a team sleeps and trains, not just where it plays. Moving to part 2, the Chattanooga case study. Anatomy of a lockdown. So as we established, Chattanooga isn't hosting a single World Cup match. However, Spain's national soccer team, ranked number 2 by FIFA, chose the city as their base camp. They set up accommodations at the downtown embassy suites and selected the Baylor School Athletic Complex for their training site. Because of this, the FAA generated 2 overlapping 1 nautical mile restricted rings that completely blanketed the city's core operating airspace, and these remained active all the way through July 20th. For local operators, the operational airspace was instantly changed, and just looking at the headline venue list wouldn't have warned them at all. For the Full Spectrum 500 drone show to happen, the operators couldn't just show up on July 3rd and ask for permission. The authorization for this complex event required months of advanced multi-agency coordination. Planning with Hamilton County Parks and Recreation began way back in November. In May, the FAA officially established the TFRs. By June, a specialized multi-agency waiver was approved to the Department of Homeland Security, clearing the way for the July 4th execution. So yeah, this was definitely not some last-minute formality. Which brings us to part 3, when LAANC is not enough. Let's talk regulatory mechanics. There is a highly dangerous myth circulating in the operator community right now, and we need to dispel it immediately. Standard airspace access tools, things like automated land grid authorizations, your standing Part 107 certificates, or recreational privileges, they carry absolutely zero validity inside a federally coordinated security TFR. LAANC simply does not adjudicate TFR access. The grid doesn't speak to the restriction. The only legal path through active TFR airspace is via advanced explicit waivers granted to a specific operator for a specific operation. To fully grasp why, you have to understand the fundamental legal nature of this tool. A temporary flight restriction is a separate legal instrument that sits on top of and entirely supersedes the underlying airspace class rules. When a TFR activates, your existing airspace access does not carry through it, period. This clarifies the absolute regulatory supremacy of a TFR. There's no self-service portal or smartphone app that's going to grant you last-minute access into one of these security rings. All right, part 4, the enforcement stakes and the deter initiative. Now, you might be wondering what actually happens if you test this system. Historically, operators might have felt that enforcement at major events was, well, kind of inconsistent. Not this summer. I really want to underscore the aggressive enforcement posture federal authorities are taking during this tournament. Consider this direct warning from FAA Administrator Brian Bedford. Drone operators should expect swift action if they violate restricted airspace. They are using absolutely every available tool to protect the airspace. Let's detail the exact tactical enforcement stakes here. The FAA has activated its Deter Initiative. That's the Drone Expedited and Targeted Enforcement Response Program. Working alongside federal law enforcement who actually possess counter-UAS authority on the ground, they're authorized to use specialized mitigation tools. If you violate this airspace, you're looking at civil penalties up to $100,000. Your aircraft can be force-landed or outright seized, and you even face potential federal criminal referral. And this isn't just theory anymore. The historic pattern of inconsistent enforcement is over. In Atlanta alone, the FBI reported that 15 unauthorized drones were quickly confiscated once the World Cup no-drone zones began.
Let's wrap up with Part 5, the operator waiver checklist, reverse engineered.
So, knowing those stakes, how do you legally operate inside these restricted rings when you have a legitimate contracted job to do? Walk through these critical chronological steps with me. Step 1, start planning months out, not weeks. Treating this like a standard same-month application is going to result in an immediate denial. Step 2, pull the active NOTAMs, notices to airmen, directly from tfr.faa.gov. The published fan event tables are just a planning artifact. The actual NOTAM is your controlling document. Step 3, identify the controlling authorities. A standard waiver just goes to the FAA, but a security TFR requires you to satisfy the FAA, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Justice. And Step 4, integrate deeply with the local security picture. A waiver on paper means absolutely nothing if the federal agents running counter-UAS mitigation on the ground don't know your aircraft are supposed to be there. To get that approval, you need a bulletproof safety case. You have to outline the technical requirements needed to satisfy both airspace regulators and security stakeholders. Think about a drone show. From an air traffic perspective, it's a tightly choreographed swarm. So your application must prove geo-bounded containment and time-bounded predictability. You need direct deconfliction with on-site federal security. You absolutely must have a clean remote ID broadcast, current registration, and highly defined launch and recovery points. Listen, an approved operation that's broadcasting cleanly and is known to the on-site security cell, that's just a routine deconfliction, but an aircraft flying dark is treated as a threat target. Nailing these elements turns your aircraft from a security hazard into a fully coordinated asset. And this brilliantly illustrates our final essential takeaway: the federal coordination, the dense counter-UAS coverage, and the waiver-only access we're seeing with this World Cup pattern. It's not a one-off. It's a direct preview for the 2028 Olympics, major NFL events, and future national special security events. The operators who build the muscle for this stringent process right now will be the only ones flying when the next federally designated event lands in their airspace. Proactive compliance is absolutely the future of complex airspace access. When the next ultimate no-drone zone activates over your city, will your fleet be grounded, or will you hold the waiver? Don't get caught guessing. Subscribe to UAVHQ to stay ahead of these critical regulatory shifts, and make sure to read the full, detailed intelligence brief at UAVHQ.com.